We started the Council today with something good. I know this is a news, which is the follow-up work that the European Union has prepared for the climate change agreement that was reached in Paris last December. This was indeed a huge result of a coordinated effort of the European diplomacy, all together, at European level, member states, ministers of foreign affairs, environment, commission, all together, and we feel a responsibility to follow this up this year with the concrete implementation of the decisions taken in Paris and looking forward to the COP22 this year. So we had Commissioner Cañete joining us and we adopted an action plan for climate diplomacy at the European level for 2016. I know you might be surprised that I start with that, but we have to keep also focus on the positive results of our work. Sometimes we have them. And we also adopted as an A point, so a consensual decision before we started our work, an extension and an amendment to the mandate of UBAM Libya that will allow us to hopefully work on some planning for support of a future government of national accord in the country. That will be most probably a point for a decision and discussion at the next Foreign Affairs Council in March. The main point of discussion of the ministers was obviously Syria. I took this opportunity to fully debrief all the ministers on the results of the support group we had in Munich just 4 days ago. We are clearly facing setbacks. We knew already on Thursday evening in Munich that it was a difficult process. We knew that all along these difficult months. If it was not difficult, we would have not created that kind of huge diplomatic coordinated effort on the international level. We will probably continue to face some setbacks. This is not a reason to change policy just after 4 days that we took common decisions. And there was a complete unity in the Council on this, on the need to stick to the commitments made in Munich, to expect from all parties that were present in Munich to stick to their own commitments and also to work for others on the ground, to work on the cessation of hostilities, humanitarian access, and the beginning of a political process leading to a transition in Damascus. As we see this gap between the commitments taken politically and the reality on the ground, let me say that we all shared the view that it is fundamental to protect civilians on the ground, in particular to guarantee security and protection for medical facilities, the work of the NGOs on the ground, and humanitarian delivery. In this respect, what happened today to the hospital of Médecins Sans Frontières is completely unacceptable. And we will continue to pressure all the parties to respect the basic principles of humanitarian law and focus on the protection of civilians. In the same spirit, the European Union is taking a fundamental role in the task force that has started already to work in Geneva in these days on humanitarian delivery of humanitarian aid. You know that the European Union, together with the member states, is by far the largest donor on Syria. We were sharing with the ministers today the fact that EU plus member states represent 2/3 of the pledges that were done in London last week, the previous one. This is a humanitarian aid not only for the refugees outside of Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Turkey, but it is also, in a substantial way, also for humanitarian action inside Syria itself. We are doing that with full cooperation with the UN and UN agencies and NGOs operating on the ground from our office in Gaziantep at the Turkish border with Syria, and with a humanitarian office opening soon in Damascus itself, to try and work on the access of humanitarian aid from the ground. Again, we do not expect this to be easy, but we are the ones taking the responsibility and the burden, but also hopefully we're managing to do something useful for the people of Syria, because the humanitarian situation there is dramatic. As I said, there was unity among all member states on the need to insist on the decisions taken that are also the content of the UN Security Council resolution adopted in December, and to insist on the fact that there is no possible military solution to this crisis, needs to be done through the beginning of the political process, accompanied by cessation of hostilities and humanitarian access. Modalities for this are being discussed currently. Difficult process, but we do not move from that track. Moving from that track, I repeat, 4 days after having taken decisions, would not be responsible. We also had this issue as well as bilateral coordination and cooperation with Lebanon, with the foreign minister of the country that was with us for a working lunch, for very intense and productive talks. And as you know, our support to Lebanon is substantial, not only from a financial point of view, but also from a political point of view. We then had other 2 points on the agenda. One was Moldova, where I imagine you have seen already the Council conclusions we have adopted, and on Belarus, where also we adopted Council conclusions that I think you have had the chance of seeing. On this in particular, ministers agreed on the fact that we see a situation in the country that is showing a positive trend, a trend that we need and we want to encourage. In the last months, resumption of the EU-Belarus human rights dialogue, the negotiations on visa facilitation and readmission agreements, and on a mobility partnership. Third, the role that Belarus has played being constructive in the region, in particular on the Ukrainian conflict, and probably most of all, the release of the remaining political prisoners happened last August. So this is clearly not a rosy or a perfect picture, far from that. That was the general assessment of all the ministers, but we agreed on a critical engagement, where some might underline more the critical, some might underline more the engagement, but the point is that we have decided with the Council conclusions to lift most of the existing restrictive measures, in particular on the 170 individuals and the 3 companies whose listings were currently suspended are lifted now. This is it. Obviously, later this week we also have a European Council, and in particular on Syria, I will make sure that the work of the foreign ministers will fit in the preparation of the European Council in this respect, and as well, obviously, on all other points that will be relevant, including migration and refugee crisis.
We have time for a few questions. Please.